What's up, guys? How are you? Welcome into a Monday morning episode of the Daily Juice Podcast. My name is Matt Peralt. You guys can follow me across all of my socials at Sports Talk Matt, and this podcast being brought to you by our friends at DraftKings. All right, we are rapidly approaching the end of the 2024 year. Second to last day of the year, our final NFL Sunday. It didn't go very well. Our final NFL Monday is tonight. Stinks because I had a really good week going and we were up over 3 units, and then Sunday happened, and that's betting. You get hot for 4 or 5 days and then you go flat and you fall on your face and you lose everything. Panthers got killed. The Colts lost. The Packers covered. The Colts lost outright, and more on that here in just 1 second. The props went 0-2. Looking at Sunday Night Football at the moment, we're trending. The current live number, I believe, is 49. So we're trending in the wrong direction for that game tonight, but it's 14-7 late second quarter there. So we might get there, but most likely I'm going to say that's going to be an over on a Sunday, and it's going to cause a losing week. If we win the under on the Sunday Night Football bet, I think that puts us pretty much flat for the week, which isn't great, but it's better than a losing week, which is kind of what we're looking at right now. If the over comes in on Sunday Night Football, which has been a dead under bet for the better part of the entire year, but given the quarterbacks and given the offenses, it was a risky bet, but we'll see how it goes. I don't know. It's about 9:30 on the East Coast at the moment when I'm taping this, so game is still very much in doubt, and we'll see what happens with the under there for Falcons and the Commanders coming up here tonight. So what are we doing today? I have one NFL bet, I have one college football bet, and I have one college basketball bet for us here on a Monday. As I leave in the morning, on Monday morning, I'll be in D.C., so I'll be taping the Tuesday morning podcast in D.C. for New Year's Eve, as we'll get heavily involved, obviously, with the college football playoffs for the 31st and the 1st, so bets on that. Just a heads up, the card is going to be thin this week. This is not going to be a big card, okay? I'm going to have 1 or 2 plays a day, probably 2 a day, probably not 3 a day. I just don't have the time to sit there and really do the work, and the lines in D.C. are supposedly horrific. I haven't bet there, but when I'm in Virginia, I'll make some plays, but not great from a line perspective. There's only one book in the whole District of Columbia, and I've heard kind of negative things about it. So when I get over to Virginia, it'll be a wider opportunity to bet and be able to put some wagers down. I'll be there on the 31st. I'll be there on the 1st. So just a quick little heads up as to what's happening with the week. It's not going to be nearly as big of a betting week for me, just given the fact that I'm not going to be in Vegas and I'm not going to be home. So just a heads up on that. So this podcast being brought to you by the DraftKings Pick6. New Pick6 players play $5, get $50 instantly in Pick6 credits. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. 18 plus in most eligible jurisdictions, but other age and eligibility restrictions may apply. Valid only in jurisdictions where DraftKings Pick6 operates. Pick6 not available everywhere, including but not limited to New York and Canada. Void where prohibited. For more terms, go to pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Okay, so let's start with tonight's game with the Lions and the 49ers. It's been not good for the Lions up against the 49ers. They are 2-17 straight up, 8-11 ATS against San Francisco over their last 19 meetings. That's dating back to 1988. The Lions haven't won in San Francisco for 14 consecutive games. That's 1975, okay? Long time. However, the NFC North has been dominant. They're now 32-10 going into yesterday, so we'll have to check and see. The Vikings and the Packers played each other. Bears lost, so it's 32-10. They're 28-14 against any other division ATS-wise this year. That's the second best straight up and ATS mark for a full season by any division since 1990, when the 2013 NFC West were this good. But the first half over the last 3 years have been so dominant for the Lions. They're 38-13-1 against the spread in the first half. When the Lions play outside the Eastern time zone, they're 14-3-1 ATS in the first half. They're 3-0 in the Mountain and Pacific time zones ATS. Dan Campbell in the first half of night games, 10-4-1 in the first half, including 4-0 on Monday Night Football. That 4-0 mark is tied with Mike Singletary as the best mark over the last 20 years for a head coach in the first half. And we made this bet last week. We're making this bet again. I don't want to lay the 3.5. Okay. I'm not interested in losing this game on the hook. I'm going to play the first half. Lions -2.5 in the first half for 1.1 units. Look, Brock Purdy has been awful dating back to Christmas of last year. Purdy's 1-8 ATS for teams 500 or better on the year. He's been awful. Okay. The Niners have just been bad, period, with all the injuries and everything else that's been going on. Brock Purdy as an underdog, he started 2 games as a dog. None of them have been at home, by the way. He's a dog here. 0-2 straight up, 0-2 ATS. No, but I don't want to play around with it, thinking the Niners might rise up in the second half. I'll take Jared Goff and the Lions offense to come out hot here and get a W early. We'll go and jump on it. Lions -2.5 in the first half for 1.1 units. Okay, bet number 2 rather. Let's talk about college football. Iowa in the Music City Bowl up against Missouri. The total is 40. Iowa was 9-3 to the over this year. This is not a big handicap, okay? There's been quarterback movement with Iowa. There's been transfer movement with Missouri. It's all, I'm betting over, okay? Why? Because Iowa needs to show something offensively for their fans, okay? They played Nebraska 13-10. They won, but 13-10 in their last game. They played Maryland on the road. They scored 29 points. They won 29-13. Against UCLA on the road, they lost 20-17. They scored just 17 points in that game. They beat Wisconsin 42-10. They beat Northwestern 40-14. I think Missouri can score. This is by far the lowest total I guess not by far. This is the lowest total for a game involving Missouri. 42 was the previous low. 30-23 was the final. Game went over by 11 points. South Carolina was 42.5 for Missouri. 34-30 was the final. It went over by 21.5 points. This is a 40-point total. We're playing the over in the Music City Bowl for Iowa and Missouri. Don't care about opt-outs. Don't care about who's playing quarterback for Iowa. Don't care about any of that stuff. We're going offense because I think Iowa needs to score. I think Missouri will give it up, but I also think Missouri will have a chance to score and potentially win this game outright here in Nashville. Be curious to see whose fan base shows up more, though, Iowa or Missouri's, but we're going over 40 for 1.1 units. And finally, to college basketball we go. This is Houston's first true road game of the year, which is stunning. It's December the 30th. They played a semi-home game against Auburn, and they lost that game outright. They played Alabama on a neutral and lost that game. They played San Diego State on a neutral, and they lost that game. First true road game. You know what we're doing here. We're fading the team on a first true road team, and I don't care how good Houston is. The 4th best team according to KenPom. Okie State, 104th. Okie State hasn't covered at home yet this year. They're 0-5 at home, but Houston's 0-4 on the road. ATS, like I mentioned. They're coming off of a big win over Texas A&M Corpus Christi, which is the former team coached by Steve Lutz. Steve Lutz is currently the head coach of Oklahoma State. Texas A&M went to the NCAA tournament under Steve Lutz. He is now the head coach of Okie State. They beat Oral Roberts by 12. They beat Tarleton State by 5. They've won 2 games in a row. They lost to Oklahoma as a 4-point dog by 15 on a neutral, but they beat Seton Hall away from home. They beat Tulsa away from home. They've had games like against Miami where they beat Miami. Now Jim Larinaga retired and whatnot. But look, it's 12. I think Houston wins the game, but I'm going to bank on the home crowd, the post-holiday hangover for Houston here. And I'm going to bank on Okie State to hopefully come and play a little bit better defensively than what they've had this year, because defensively they've been bad. 303rd effective field goal percentage, 107th in efficiency, 284th in 3-point defense, 276th in 2-point defense. Houston, the exact opposite. They're 3rd in defense. They're 1st in effective field goal percentage. They're 1st in 2-point percentage. They're 39th in 3-point percentage. They're 2nd in block percentage. I mean, Houston is unbelievable, but they got to go to Stillwater. They got to go to Hokie Land. They got to go take on the Pokes. This is going to be an awesome environment. I can't wait to watch this game. But Houston at Okie State, I'm taking the 12 points. Give me the Cowboys plus 12 for 1.1 units. All right, so 3 bets for us here today on a Monday. Lions laying 2.5 in the first half for them for 1.1 units against the Niners on Monday Night Football. Iowa, Missouri in the Music City Bowl over 40 for 1.1 units. And Oklahoma State at home up against Houston plus 12 for the Cowboys for 1.1 units. Those are the plays for us on a Monday. My name is Matt Peralt. You guys can follow me across all socials at Sports Talk Matt. Every morning, it's the Daily Juice Podcast presented by DraftKings.